Welcome back to Making a Murder, my journal, and we're going to start a series here regarding the evidence. And we're going to start with this, which is part one, and this is the bones. One of the things that really caught my attention is what I originally believed before I did my own research. And what I believed was what I was being told by the media. And where did that come from? And can the media sway the jury? Absolutely. I think it was Beauty that said almost all the jurors, except for one or two, right off the bat, were thinking he was already guilty. Why? Because this is what got reported. This is an actual clip from a news broadcast at that time that I'm reading. Doesn't matter what media because it went all over all media. The Calumet County Sheriff says bones found at the family auto salvage yard of a man charged with murder matched those of the freelance photographer. Sheriff Jerry Pagel says the FBI confirms that the bones found at Steve Avery's family salvage yard are those of 25-year-old Teresa Halbach. So right there, it's coming right out of the guy that's in charge of the entire investigation, and he's telling you that he has FBI confirmation that those are the bones that are Teresa Halbach's. So this is the bone that kind of set it all in motion, and it's bone BZ. And there are two, if you look, there is two of them. So that explains why Sherry can have one and why the FBI can have one. Unless, unfortunately, we don't know at this point, they just put a two and really only had one bone, and we don't know. So the bones were found in three locations. There was a location that was behind Steve Avery's garage, Desi or Janda burn barrel, and then also in the gravel pit, the quarry, which was quite a ways away. So the bones did not get proper care when they were found. And the top picture shows how, we'll just call her Dr. E for now, how she was handed the bones. And she was just told that they were found by one of the law enforcement officers, and they were found in the burn pit by the garage. This is a bone fragment on the bottom that is being referred to as a skull bone. We don't know where that was found because it was never documented. They didn't grid anything off. They didn't take pictures of anything. There was absolutely zero documentation where the bones were found. Now, I'm not an investigator. I watch TV, I watch movies, but remember that little chalk outline of the victim? That doesn't happen in this case. So they either chose to be, I guess the best way to put it is they absolutely decided that they didn't want you to know where the bones came from, or they just absolutely didn't care, even though they had experts everywhere at their disposal. So a complete match would be 18. So what they're referring to in 18 is when they do a profile, 18 loci are what they're using to define a full, complete match. Now, this is a lady that does the testing. I like to call her the big-haired lady, and she works at our state crime lab. And she did a lot of the testing. She, let's back up for a minute. Let's explain something. She was also in the 1985 trial for Steve Avery, and she was the one that said, yep, this is the hair that matches him, and it was found on the victim. So that was the sole evidence, physical evidence they had. And she was responsible, in a sense, for confirming that evidence did indeed match Avery. And then in 2002, it was found out that the DNA proved that wasn't his hair. Okay, new DNA. And she knew that. She took another year to actually release the information. So he said an extra year. It's kind of sad. But what caught my eye was, if you go to, give it a second, it'll flick. This is where we have the evidence list. And if you look at evidence piece 343, it says email to, and it says Shirley Cullihan, which we know her as someone else. Callahan's correct. And it's from Ken Kratz, and it's dated 2/7/06, and it says not being offered. So the defense was not being given this information. So let's go see if we can find out, now that the case is closed, what that letter pertained to. Let's see. All we need is this. Give it a second to open. All right, so this letter is from February 7th. Ken Kratz, Sherry Callahan. He got it right. Okay, so let's go down there, and he says, can you identify the... I'm going down here. Where are we here? Where it says, I still don't understand the two new markers, Penta E and D. So there's new markers that are not on the standard test. So they've taken something to say that this is the person, correct? That's your standard test. That should be the 18 Loki. That's how they know that this matches. But maybe they don't have that. Maybe they only have a partial. We'll see. But anyway, now we've got two new ones on the test item that we don't have on the other. That makes very little sense. But let's go ahead and go down here. He's asking her if she can identify the 7 Loki that matched on the Teresa analysis. And it says, what of most will be presented at trial will be computer-based exhibits, PowerPoints. And so although we can develop charts and the like, we'll need to do that in a computer format. Okay. So he wants it in a... All right, let's go down. Mark Weger is checking the 1985 Manitowoc blood sample taken to make sure what it is. Okay, let's reread that. Mark Weger is checking the 1985 Manitowoc blood sample taken to make sure what it is. Why? What does the 1985 blood sample, are they using that as his cross-reference instead of using his new one? Because if they are, that puts his sample right there in the same storage container, those little wooden shelves that the big-haired lady talked about, all together. That's big. All right, well, let's stick to topic here and not get too far off, because I want to talk about bones right now, and we can come back to that. So he says, I understand the frequency pointed on the mtDNA match. It's amazing. However, how much weight the public attributes to the finding locally that, quote, the FBI confirms that the human remains are that of the victims. We were careful not to say that at all. But perceptions are what they are. On that topic, didn't the RFLP testing use 7 Lokis for the match? Okay. You know, really? So he's explaining to her. He's walking her through this. And he's just in shock that they matched and that the public took that as a match. And can she come up with another report that 7 Lokis will work for in a court of law? You know, he's trying to like bait her hook and let her know that this is what they're expecting. So, you know, that's frustrating as heck. But let's go back up and let's see what we got. So there's that email that we just saw. In our survey using the Georgia sample, respondents were blinded to contextual information about the case. Larry Mueller of the University of California in Irvine says, we may have seen different results in the data had been presented to them by police officers or prosecution lawyers. The difference between you giving them the data and saying, what do you make of it? And the local district attorney giving them the data and saying, we've arrested someone, is his profile in here? Is huge. So the difference between you saying, what do you make of this? Or, we've arrested this person. Does he fit the profile? Because it's huge. Yeah. Okay, so this is another court document from the state of Wisconsin. It goes all the way down through November 9th, then November 14th, and it's Callahan's report. And I thought this was interesting. So let's blow it up a little bit. I'll try to read it out to you. On November, blah, blah, blah. Sorry about that. On November 15th, 2005, in preliminary report, Callahan indicated to your complaint, okay, the complaint is down here, it's Fassbender. Okay, Mr. Fassbender. So indicated to your complaint that the partial DNA profile developed from the charred remain is consistent with the female DNA profile developed from the human bloodstain in the girl's vehicle, as well as the cherry Pepsi, which is located in the victim's vehicle. So all that just said, if you followed, is that at this point we've got the charred bone that they found somewhere, which we really don't know where. We don't know whose it is at this point. That bone matches whoever drank that soda and whoever got blood in that car. And we haven't even proven it's her car yet. I'm just saying, this is silly. How did they get away with this? Crime lab analysis, Sherry Callahan, reported that a partial DNA profile was obtained from a charred piece of tissue, item BZ, that's that bone we saw, alleged to have been found in the burn pit ash. Alleged. She used the STR Promega 16 amplification kit where 15 markers are compared with one gender marker. Callahan tested that since the specimens were degraded, likely due to extreme heat, she only obtained peaks for 7 markers out of the 15 plus the gender marker, so less than 50%. The FBI CODIS databank does not even record DNA profiles with less than 9 identifying markers. They actually require 13, I believe. So here's item BZ in the middle. The left has the genetic markers, right has Teresa. So you can count them. You can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then the X on the bottom, female. 7. Wow. You know, it's frustrating because the FBI has only said that they can only agree at this point that these are even not her bones. Okay, so for instance, if you look at this FBI report, let's just open that real quick. Here's the report that actually nobody could get it settled through the state. We wanted to get more clarification, and the FBI came in. And so they got a lot of bones. You can see that. They got quite a few, but the following items were submitted uncover of communication dated November 7th. And apparently, if we go on to read this, due to the condition of the submitted bones, fragments, no, I can't even say that word, mitochondrial, none of the mcDNA examines were conducted because they were just destroyed. All right, so let's go and see what else the FBI had to say. That, remember, Mr. Colmet guy there, he was telling everybody in the world, and all the media was, that these are her bones, that the FBI said they're her bones. All right, so we have Q1 and K1. K1 appears to be a buccal swab from Karen Habach, so that's going to be their standard. And then the charred remains of 1BZ, or Q1 now at the Fed lab. All right, so we're just going to jump into it. They do this mitochondrial DNA. I'm sorry. Due to the close, I'm reading this part right here where it's actually telling us what happened. Due to the closely related sequences obtained from specimen Q1 and K1, Teresa Halbach cannot be excluded as a source of Q1 charred remains. Cannot be excluded. Well, yeah, but, while 7 Loki is like basically it could be 1 out of every 1,000 people, it's going to match her. So how big is Manitowoc? I'm just saying, 1 out 50, and they're all related. All these people are related. Oh, Lordy. Okay. So, no, that is not what the FBI said. They said that she could not be ruled out as the person, and that's based right directly off the mother. Now, they're doing partial matches for the rest off of partial matches. This is so shaky and so unprofessional. Absolutely. All right, so they go back looking for bones. They're like, okay, we got to come up with some more, and they're sifting through debris. And you can see there's a lot of important people there. So this was found out recently. So you see this middle bone? It's from a bird. It looks just like it's from a bird. And they have that in evidence. You can see the side bones are the picture of the evidence. Wow. Telling a jury it is plausible that anyone besides a suspect would have the same DNA test results is seldom, if ever, justified. Isn't that what this whole case was based on? Is it that it was infallible DNA? This means that even with 12 or 13 markers, now remember, she only had 7, so this means that even with 12 or 13 markers matching, there would be an occurrence in 1 in 65,000. So if 12 and 13 put you 1 in 65,000, what does 7, which is almost less than half? I mean, it's 7. 1 in 1,000. I'd play the lottery for 1 in 1,000. All right. So much more common than 1 in a billion. Oh, yes. That's what Mrs. Cullihan said. The less markers compared, the more common the occurrence. 122 pairs matched at 9 of the 13 markers. So 122 pair matched out of 65,000. And that was at 9 and 13 markers. Wonder how many would have matched at 7. We're talking probably 3/4. Clearly, a match of 7 or 15 would be considerably more common than the reported in 1 billion at trial. The DNA evidence should have been reported more generally, as Teresa Halbach cannot be excluded as source. You see, among all the states that have DNA database, only Arizona has made its DNA base available to scientists to examine. In the examination, the scientists were able to find the following matches. 122 pairs out of those 65,000 had 9 to 13 matching Lokis. So, yeah, 7. This just kind of goes on to tell you, I'll leave it on the screen for a minute. It's about missing persons and how you can use kinship to draw a swab of their saliva, and then you can take the mother and the brother or the sister, and you can actually build a profile that's very reliable, so that you wouldn't need to rely on really broken down partial DNA reports. And then this is just showing that hypothesis scenario with a mix of DNA from several people on a skin mask was given, and Coble asked, he's a bigwig over at the scientist lab, Coble asked 108 labs across the country to determine whether a separate DNA sample, which he posted, had come from a suspect in the robberies. Also, part of the mix, 73 of the labs got it wrong, saying the suspect's DNA was part of the mix, when in fact it was not. Not cool. It's so powerful, the DNA is, because it has firm roots in science and backed by statistics. Analysts focus on 13 or more places in the genome called loci, where humans are extraordinarily diverse. Now remember, we only have 7 in this case. Can't get any higher. You never hear 8. You never hear 10, 9, none of that. It's always 7. And right there, and analysts focus in 13 places in the genome called loci, where humans are extraordinarily diverse. Each loci contains a short tandem repeat, a bit of DNA that is repeated multiple times. The exact number of repeats of each loci varies between person to person. It can range anywhere between the low single digits to the mid 50s. All right, and we've got 7. Nice. Okay. It says labs must also take steps to avoid bias. Butler, now he's one that has really put this whole concept of how important it is that if the lab consultant knows who this person is, the suspect, and if they get any pressure or they know this person has already been found to be guilty of other crimes, they're more likely to be biased. So if they're biased, Butler says that some labs continue to insist upon seeing suspect profiles before analyzing evidence from the crime scene, which could lead to a biased decision making. Analysts also often know too much about the suspect and other evidence to be impartial, and public labs often have close ties to the police. Crime labs, including DNA labs, should not be under the control of law enforcement agency, says one U.S. analyst who wishes to remain anonymous. We are scientists, not cops or prosecutors. Okay, we have somebody that was, remember, she was the one that accidentally or mistakenly has identified the first piece of evidence that lost Avery 18 years of his life to a wrongful conviction based on partially that one piece of hard evidence. And now she's testing again. At times, DNA evidence has been misused or misunderstood, leading to miscarriages of justice. A man with Parkinson's disease was unable to walk more than a few feet without assistance, was convicted of burglary based on a partial DNA profile match. Partial. Jeez. His lawyer insisted on more DNA tests, which exonerated him in 2011. I mean, seriously. So here we go with the partial. Here's Ms. Callahan's conclusion. The partial profile developed from the charred remain of item BZ is consistent with the partial profile developed from the pap smear reportedly collected from Teresa Halbach, item BF. So, reportedly collected, partial profile from the pap smear, when we could have had a familiar, a mom, brother, sister, all available to build a profile. And also, it's a partial profile on a charred bone that we can't rule out to be hers. So we have this huge pit with a dog that's chained up. And it's got a vest. And so we know, because this hole is there, this is where the bones were found. Well, this is what was said. On multiple occasions at multiple sites, Wisconsin law enforcement officials declined to photograph discoveries of human bones. Hold on just a jiff. As part of the November 2005 investigation of suspect Stephen Avery. So they declined to photograph. So there's absolutely no evidence where the bones came from. This gentleman is the guy, Scott Fairgrave, that actually was hired by the defense. And he says, I complained about the lack of photos and the quality. It was very poor, said Scott Fairgrave, a forensic anthropologist in Ontario. He's the chairman of the whatever. I'm just telling you. So they cover everything with a tarp. Who knows where they got the tarp? Those are bones. They're going to be tested for DNA, but hey, just cover that. Cover those, Could be DNA that somebody laid on that tarp and now it's dripping down in there, but just cover it and make sure, you don't need to worry about your clothes touching anything. It just kills me, you guys. What's disturbing is the Hallbecks were told on 11/9 that the bones found on Avery's property was from a female, even though they didn't have a conclusion ID match. The Hallbox accepted the female bones found on Avery's property was Teresa's and even called off the searches. They were mourning Teresa's death at prayer vigil on November 10th, based solely on a female bone found at Avery's property. Unfortunately, it wasn't even enough to tell you if it was a human bone. So, could have been a doe bone. You know, they're hunters. It's female. We know it's female. But we don't even have enough to tell you anything much than it's a female bone. And you're not going to keep looking for her. Okay. But the bones in the gravel pit, they were not able to identify whose bones they were exactly. But they were pelvic bones. They appeared, based on the expert's opinion, to be a human and consistent with a female. I can't remember if she said young female, but most importantly, they appeared to have the same degree and pattern of burning or calcined, and they call it, as the ones that were found in the burn barrel behind the Bobby Dassey house and the burn pit behind Stephen Avery's house. So we just know it's young female. And they haven't even got any DNA off that. That didn't work. That's not BZ. That's not that little bone. So they are calling off the search, and they have no idea to this day if that was her bone. They're really an important issue because where the body was burned should have determined guilt or innocence alone, ignoring everything else. Because if the jury believed or understood that this body was burned elsewhere, then the fact that the majority of her bones were found in his burn pit should have proven that he was not the killer. In other words, if the bones are found in your backyard and then you find little bits of bones elsewhere, in just like a burn barrel at somebody else's house, and a little bit of bones down in the quarry, you would not take your bones out of your pit to go put them else places. You would just bury them, you know. But in this case, it looks like they were at the other places first. And if they were, then he didn't do it, because those bones are all put back in that pit. He wouldn't have carried them from somewhere else to incriminate himself. So we know that. So they cannot say these bones came from anywhere but that pit. The lack of any photos taken by the law enforcement. Yep. 3 sites. Very puzzling. Jerry Beauty, Avery's lawyer. The state never offered any explanation for why law enforcement officers failed to photograph the bones. Yeah, same old story. The DNA evidence. Oh, who's this? Okay, Stop Wrongful Convictions. Lynn Blanchard. The DNA evidence described above is not conclusive. However, I can't even talk anymore. I'm so frustrated. How is it even possible for tissue to survive a fire that disintegrates 60% of the bone mass, the teeth which are commonly used to identify a body, because they outlast the bone, didn't even survive fire? Something's wrong, and it becomes difficult to accept the evidence as presented. Why weren't protocols followed? No coroner. Yeah, she was held off. Nope, you can't come look at anything. And if you come down here, we're going to arrest you. Now, she's the only one not involved in the original lawsuit. And she wasn't involved in the original case. And she's the only one they won't let check out anything. Okay? So she's the most unbiased person. And they're like, oh, heck no. So that's a big deal. No arson investigator. No photograph was called on the scene. They had all these high-paid experts at their disposal and didn't allow them over there, didn't call them over there, just shoveled them into a box and gave them to Dr. E. And most of the evidence is a mess now. This goes on to talk about some of the information here. It's now time for DNA analysts to accept, under certain conditions, subjectivity and even bias may affect their work. There you go. And it says on the bottom here, I would be a little bit concerned if one person excludes and one person includes him. At the end of the day, we should all come to about the same answer on this stuff. But yet, Zellner can't reproduce anything that the state labs has for evidence. So, bringing up Zelder, let's finish this off with some great updates. During Zellner's press conference on August 26, 2016, she said that only 30% of the bones were removed and 29 or recovered, I should say, and 29 of the teeth were never recovered. The bones were moved, that was omitted. There was a human pelvic found over in the quarry. The bones were in different spots. The bones were not burned whole. It's not possible to do that. So you've got the same bone in 3 locations. You've got only 30% of the bones recovered. The bones look like they were planted. The property was closed down. The coroner from Manitowoc was not allowed on the property, actually, and was not even notified of the murder, which validates Wisconsin's statute. She also wrote most of Miss Hollabach's bones, and I question if they are 29 of her teeth, which not found in Mr. Avery's burn pit. State expert Leslie Eisenberg testified that the volume of bones discovered in the burn pit was 2 to 3/5 of what might be expected. Dr. Eisenberg also admitted that the bones had been moved prior to their location in Mr. Avery's burn pit. Dr. Eisenberg, we're just going to call her Dr. E from now on, testified that she suspected that the bones found in the Radant quarry, which included a pelvis bone, were human. I want to thank you guys for staying tuned, and I know it's a little long, but you got a lot to go over there. Do some checking yourself, but now you understand. Let's do a real quick recap, and then we're out of here, and I'm going to get some rest. So I do this to help free Stephen Avery and Brendan Dassey, because if you didn't do the crime, you shouldn't do the time. Thanks for watching. Have a good day. Bye.